Time for another TED Talk. Welcome back to TED Talks. This is week 2. So day 6, kind of. Day 5, as you heard, was a bit of a write-off because of the storm. We did actually have another storm today. Storm Franklin, I believe it was called. But it wasn't so bad. I'm not saying that because it didn't really have an effect on the country, like in the UK. I know people in certain areas were really affected by this, but where I am, this wasn't really that much of a big deal. I think it died down a lot and it did miss our area. So we got right down to it today. We started off with walk 1, which was just settling in with a walk. It'd been 3 days. So we did a walk that we'd done last week a few times, not in this area, just to get myself, Ted, back into it, get into the groove, get into the swing of things. Weather was fine, windy, really windy, but not really any issues. Ted did another poop. It's still a bit of an issue. We're not making a big thing about it, partly because it's still early days, but it is something we are going to be really on top of going forwards now, because we don't want him going to the toilet when he is working. So we are going to be making sure from this point that we are being really persistent with him before we leave the house, because there was no real reason for him to do it this time. It was just sort of an opportunistic kind of thing. So after this first walk, we got back to the van and decided we would take Ted for a run. So we packed into the van, went down to the woods, which are the same woods where he was a little bit distracted in previous walk that we did, where I said that I had to keep on top of him because he would go there sometimes to have a bit of a run around. Let him loose. He was one of the only dogs there. There was a few other dogs, but not loads. I think people were put off by the weather. And he had a good run around, got a little bit muddy, but not too bad. Really cut loose. Like you could see that he wanted to burn off some energy, especially after the weekend. Good thing with Ted is he would always stop before he got too far away and check where we were. Like he would look back to make sure we were coming his way. And then if he felt that he got a little bit too far away, he would just lie down and just wait for us. And then when we got a little bit closer, he'd pop up, start running around again. He came back every time he was called, which is fantastic. He also would just come back on his own anyway, so regardless of being called, he would occasionally come back and just sort of give my hand a tap and say, oh, I'm still here, I'm having fun, but I'm still around, I'm going to go away now, and then he'd run off again. He found a cabbage, which was very odd. I don't know if it came from someone's garden or came from a bin, but he found half a cabbage in the field. We had to be on his case for this because he did pick it up and it was like, I don't think he wanted to eat it. I thought he wanted to play with it a bit more than that. So we did have to be on him to get him to drop it and give him a lot of praise to sort of distract him to not try and eat or run away with a cabbage, which is very odd, very odd. But he was very good, other than like the cabbage and the little poop, which we didn't make a big deal of. And he really enjoyed it. Then we had lunch. Walk 2 was another repeat walk that we did on Thursday last week, where we went to my local supermarket. This time we did the route that I would normally take. It isn't one of the routes that Ted has already done, so it was a good opportunity to get involved with a route that we are going to regularly do. Guidedog took a step back, the instructors, just like they've done in a few of the walks we've done last week. The walk in general was really good. It was good to get a little bit of a feel for Ted without having someone over my shoulder saying, we're going to do this, going to do that. I already knew the route anyway, so it was quite good to really get into the swing of things. Not a long walk, just a bit of a tricky one. Lots of things to think about, a lot of things to consider. There were a couple of chances on here to do corrections. So that's when the dog will make a little bit of an error. And it's not their fault. Ted is still learning as well. And there are situations where he will do a couple of things where he's not paying attention or he'll be a little bit cheeky. These are good though, because it means that I can basically correct the behaviour very nicely, and he is associating me as an authority figure, so it's good to have a few of these opportunities to make those corrections, because it means that he will bond to me a little bit better and be more obedient, because even though he's great at the moment, there will be times that he will challenge me as the months go on. So starting these now is going to be a really beneficial thing going forwards. I put down here on the notes, chicken lady. So when we came out of the supermarket, there was a woman who's standing outside the door just eating chicken legs. She had like from the hot counter that you get in the supermarket. She just got some chicken legs and she was just munching on a couple. outside of the door. She didn't even go that far away from the door. No judgment, of course. Like, if that's you do you. But that was a big distraction for Ted. Had to sort of focus him up. Funny thing was that the chicken lady was walking the same way as we were. So where we were stopping at roads to wait for traffic, she was sort of like power walking on. So we never really got that far away from her. And she was still eating the chicken as we went. So it was a constant distraction as we were going down this main road to go back home, that occasionally would go ahead of her and then would stop, and then she'd walk past with chicken and then distract Ted. So had to be on him for that quite a bit. Aside from that, he was absolutely fine. He was great. No other issues. He did, like I said, there was a couple of opportunities to correct him where he overstepped a curb a little bit, and then I could sort of bring him back and get him to approach it again. No big issues. Nothing to really complain about. It's still early days and he did a really good job. So to cap off the day, we did a weekly review of what happened last week. So considering that I'm putting these thoughts onto a recording anyway, I don't feel there's much point of going into what we discussed at the review because it's all stuff I've discussed on the podcast anyway. So we did discuss what we wanted to do going forwards. And as I've said before, I'm not going to go into too much detail about that because I want it to be a surprise when I do something interesting so I can explain what we've done and how it was done in future episodes. But the review went well. Guidedog was happy with my progress. I'm happy with my progress. We discussed some of the challenges that have happened and what we look to do going forwards. There weren't any outright concerns from them or myself. We are on track, even though we lost a day last week because of the storm, because of the fact that I am the only one doing the training at the moment, and I've previously used and worked a dog. It means that we're getting through a lot of the stuff at quite a good pace. So no issues at all. I think the one thing that is in the back of my mind is I'm just very eager to get qualified and get going with things. Like, I appreciate there's still a lot to do and they still need to sign off a lot of things. We still have to have a lot more discussions. But when I think about all the stuff we still have to cover, I'm very aware that I need to get back to work. And now that Weston has come back from his little holiday, looking after Weston as well as training with Ted and work is going to be very intense coming up. So of course TED Talks are still going to keep going for this week. Next week we'll see how it goes. I will still aim to put some out, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were less frequent and they were a bit more of a every few days, purely based on the amount of stuff that I have coming up. Well, I hope you enjoyed that quick update and I look forward to sharing the rest of the week with you. There's some really exciting things to come. See ya. For more updates, videos and photos, join us on Instagram at Wes and Ted's Excellent Adventures.